here are agreed that we are animals. I'm not asking for a show of hands. So. You know, when I started my professional life, I was a comparative and physiological psychologist. And it was a prime sin to anthropomorphize the experience of other animals. Well, it had a certain logic. For example, we humans secrete a hormone called oxytocin. Oxytocin releases that spurt of milk from a mother's breast. It also supports, for us, emotional attachment and empathy. Men, when they become fathers, too, produce oxytocin, which intensifies their attachment to their babies. On the other hand, poisonous snakes also produce oxytocin, but instead of letting down milk, oxytocin releases their venom through their fangs when they attack their prey or an enemy. I doubt that those serpents are feeling empathy. But neither can we deny there's meaning in the patterns of behavior that we see in other species. Anybody ever owned a dog or still owns a dog? If we intimately live with them, we get it. Why they wag their tails or growl, even though we lack tails and we have a different way of being nasty or scared. So today, I want to talk about two species, both mammals. They live hugely different lives on different continents. And some deeply thoughtful and committed researchers have devoted themselves to really seeing them in their own wild worlds, day after day, all day, for decades. I'm going to talk about elephants and about wolves in the wild. I believe they have deep lessons to teach us. This is not about how elephants or wolves are like us. It's about who they are. And yet, in my heart, I pray we may live better, act better, as human animals, knowing who they are and how they live. This, though I cannot possibly grow ears and trunk like an elephant, we won't talk about weight, and I shall never have a wolf's fur and its powerful jaws. Well, first the story of elephants, the largest of all land animals. A researcher named Cynthia Morse spent 40 years living close to and watching herds of elephants in Kenya's Amboseli National Park near Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa. To start with, it turns out elephants have to learn everything about being elephants from other elephants who protect them from the day they are born and throughout life. A newborn is about 200 pounds. Mom weighs about 8,000 pounds, and males can weigh about twice that, up to 16,000 pounds. A matriarch, elephants do live in matriarchal societies, was named Deborah by the researchers, and she was an experienced mother, age 47. Her newest baby fell down 5 times in the first half hour of his life. But Deborah carefully got him up by gently putting a foot under him and steadying him with her trunk. It took an hour and a half till the baby found her nipples, while Deborah stood quietly with her leg well forward so her newborn could nurse. For months, babies stick close to their mothers, and the mother hums to the infant continually, as if she were saying, "Here I am, I'm right here, here I am, I'm right here." Babies wobble and fall and trip on roots. And when they get hurt, they give this loud, squeaky cry. And all the young females in the group rush over to make sure the baby's okay. When a baby elephant once fell into a steep-sided water hole and couldn't get out, her mother and aunt started digging out one side of the hole, and they made a ramp and saved the baby's life. No child gets left behind. The matriarch leading the herd sets the pace to make sure that the young and also the disabled can keep up and get rest. They may travel 40 or 50 miles a day to go to water or special grasses that they like. Elephants work together to help any others who are trapped, for instance, in a muddy riverbank. They cooperate to raise up an injured or fallen elephant. One elephant was seen plucking up some food and placing it in the mouth of another whose trunk was badly injured. Elephants sometimes help people. A local herdsman got into an accidental confrontation with a matriarch elephant. His leg was broken. When she realized that he couldn't walk, the elephant used her trunk and front feet to move him very gently over to a nearby tree and propped him in its shade. She stood guard over him all night until his villagers came to find him the next day and help him home. It's the matriarch who leads by personality, by example, and she decides where they'll go. She stands at the edge of her group, facing the direction she wants to travel, and communicates with her rumbles, and she waits. She'll team up with other families that they're close to. They can meet up at a marshy river edge, for example, with a couple of hundred other elephants, and they will all bathe and romp peacefully together. They know and remember each other. Now, I know I've talked mostly about matriarchs and not male elephants. Males in the herd are followers, despite the fact that they're, 16,000 pounds. They're double the size of the matriarch. They do make babies. Males come into must once a year. And they act very bossy for a few days, and the females love that. They love males in must. What's curious, though, is that each male comes into must at a different time. He comes in once a year, but they're staggering their shots of testosterone, so they're not competing and not fighting with each other for a female in estrus. Males have to live until they're about 30 before they have their first must and sexual experience. That don't sound very human, does it? Females, on the other hand, come into estrus about age 11, but their pregnancy lasts for 2 years, and then they nurse their babies for 2 years. And they don't come into estrus again until they're done nursing, so they come into estrus every 4 years. Boy, family planning. And males may not be leaders, but they too teach the young. They like to play games, for example, pretending that they're facing an enemy, say a lion, and they run and thrash the grass and beat off the threat. So, don't they ever make trouble? Sure. Mom wants to wean the baby after 2 years, but he wants more milk. So she moves her foreleg back to block him from her breast. Well, one baby got really mad about being weaned. So he poked and stuck his tusks into his mother. Then he turned around and kicked her, and then stuck his trunk into her anus. You know, she didn't sit on him and crush him to death. She just moved away. Right? Well, another adult elephant was upset and angry with a comrade. The matriarch stepped in between them and stood head to head with the aggrieved elephant. She rumbled and raised her head and lifted her ears and reached her trunk towards the other one, and there was reconciliation. Above all, elephants grieve. It matters who's died, and they know who's died. They come in silence as a group. They investigate the body. They recognize the bones of the one who's died, and they bury their dead beneath branches and leaves. They may cover the wound of a corpse with a layer of mud. Depending on the relationship, they may eat less, sleep less. They may get listless or very agitated. When an infant dies, the mother sometimes carries that dead infant on her tusks for several days, something they never do with a healthy infant. How do they do all that they do? Besides body language, they rumble. Their songs span 10 octaves. Much of the sounds they make are below our human auditory threshold. Elephants can hear each other's rumbles over the distance of several miles. And they do have more than 100 ritual gestures to communicate with each other in different contexts. If we were talking about people, we would use words like compassion, wisdom, and forbearance, and playfulness, and the skills to live in peace. They live in right relationship with themselves and their world, but they're just doing what elephants do. I know I have never measured up to the grace with which these creatures live their lives. I'm more hopeful that I could maybe be more like a good wolf. Okay, the story of wolves. Again, a devoted researcher, a career ranger in Yellowstone National Park named Rick McIntyre followed wolves for 15 years in all seasons, all day, both by sight and by the electronic signals from the research collars that some of the wolves were fitted with. Hey, wolves don't get high ratings in the press or in fairy tales. They live in packs that are typically closely related families, a breeding pair, we don't call them a married couple, and their pups. They can compete fiercely to the death with another pack or an individual they want to force out of their pack. Wolves kill other wolves. Wolves will eat the pups of other wolf packs. And wolves kill other animals for food. The two most common causes of death in wolves, number one, is getting killed by human beings, and number two is getting killed by other wolves. The wolves in this story were introduced into Yellowstone Park from Canada 70 years after the last wolf went extinct there. They were brought in because the elk population, the favorite meal of wolves, had so grown out of control that the elk were starving and destroying the environment. So, here are some things that are striking about wolves and their ways. Family loyalty tops the list. The pack leaders, often called the alpha male and the alpha female, depend on their children to defend the den, to hunt, to hold their territory and fend off rivals. Baby wolves, like baby elephants, have to learn how to be wolves. The older children help care for the younger ones. Eventually, though, very different from the elephants, the young leave their pack and start their own families, or sometimes are adopted into new families already formed, but where they meet a need. Wolves divide the labor they need for survival. Most predators go after prey smaller than themselves, like a cat after a little mouse. Wolves go after an animal that may be 5 to 10 times its weight. Female wolves weigh about 90 to 110 pounds. They are faster than the males, who weigh about 120 to 130 pounds. So it's the females and the young children that start the hunt. They catch up with an elk and start biting its legs and haunches to slow it down. Then a big wolf rushes in, plunges past his children and the elk, turns and lunges up to bite the elk's throat for the kill. Only 2 or 3 of the pack ever do the killing. Hunting is teamwork. Not pretty, but then the whole family gets to eat and sleep and live and feed their pups. Wolves will carry about 20 pounds of meat in their stomachs back to the den where they regurgitate the meat to feed the pups. And a wolf will risk and sometimes sacrifice its own life to save its pups or another pack member by acting as a decoy to distract an enemy. They can do favors for a wolf they like and return favors that they've received. And they can also plan revenge. When a pack has been absent from each other for a while and come back together, they press together body to body and wag their tails and lick each other's faces. When they're young, they treat the older wolves the way a domestic dog greets its human keeper. They bow their heads down and lower their bodies. But as adults, they become captains of their own lives. There's one wolf whose story I will always hold in my heart. He was a perfect wolf. He was called by a number, 21, and the park ranger tracked 21 just about every day of that wolf's life. 21 was a fearless defender of his family. That ranger once watched as 21 took on 6 wolves attacking him at the same time. And 21 routed every one of them. McIntyre wrote, "Watching him felt like seeing something supernatural. I'd be thinking, a wolf can't do what I'm watching this wolf do." What's even more special about 21, he never lost a fight and he never killed any defeated opponent. A bit of a backstory about 21. He left his mother and birth pack when he was 2.5, and 2 days later he showed up with another pack whose alpha male had just been illegally shot to death. The females welcomed him as their alpha male. The pups loved him, and instead of eating this other male's pups, he immediately adopted them and began feeding them. And he was extraordinarily generous with the pack that he led. Immediately after the hunt would make a kill, usually an elk, he would walk away or lie down for a nap, while the rest of the family, who had nothing to do with the hunt, would come and eat their fill. One of 21's favorite things was to wrestle with little pups. He'd pretend to lose and let some little wolf jump up on him and bite his fur. Then the triumphant little one would be standing over him with his tail wagging. So 21 could pretend and teach. Those pups learned the confidence they would need every day of their hunting lives, how it felt to conquer something much bigger than themselves. While 21 was sexy, he impregnated 3 females in his new pack, and of the 3 litters, 30 pups survived. So Alpha Wolf 21 had 37 wolves in his pack, the largest ever recorded. But only 21 had what it took to lead a pack that large. They would usually have fragmented into smaller groups. He defended their territory in wars, kind of like our human tribal fights. Again, 21 never lost a fight, and he never killed a vanquished wolf. That park ranger thinks of 21 as Muhammad Ali, who never lost a fight, but refused to go to war in Vietnam and kill others of his species. On a day in June, when 21 was 9 years old, he was lying down with his family when an elk came by. Everyone jumped up to give chase. He jumped up too, but he just watched the action and then lay down again. Later, when the pack headed up towards their den, 21 instead went across the valley in the opposite direction, alone. When Rick McIntyre, the ranger, heard there was a dead wolf up in the hills, he rode up on horseback to investigate. That last day, it seems, 21 knew his time had come. He used the last of his energy to go up to the very top of a high mountain, a place he knew. Amid high summer grass and mountain wildflowers, 21 curled up in the shade of a large tree, and on his own terms, he went to sleep for the last time. So, what can we learn for our own lives from these incredible, powerful creatures, both of whose numbers are dwindling due to poaching and human encroachment? By careful watching and seeing them in their own worlds, we've begun to understand their communication that's vital for their survival, yet seems so different from our own. Our new understandings that cross the boundaries of species tell us something transcendent about our Earth, our universe. I once thought the story of Androcles and the lion was a made-up myth. Now, I'm not so sure. There was that elephant who cared for an injured herdsman. Dolphins have saved humans from drowning. Parrots have understood and comforted wounded veterans of war. I can believe that Androcles, an escaped slave, and the lion were both stressed and endangered when they met. Androcles had the courage and empathy to approach and mend that lion's paw. The lion understood his approach and let him help. And then that lion had the compassion to shelter and feed Androcles in his cave, as he might have fed one of his own cubs. They never forgot each other, and the caring between them saved both their lives when they met again in the Roman arena, where people were expecting to be amused by deadly violence. Elephants and wolves, like most people, care for their own young and teach them through play and example what they need to know for their lives. But elephants stay together as a community throughout life and teach and take care of each other and each other's children. And they grieve and bury their dead with no less respect than any human tribe I know of. In contrast, wolves leave the nuclear family in adolescence and take their chances of survival, trying to form a new little family or join one as a follower, or they may get killed trying. Both species are terrific at teamwork, but in the service of very different motives. Elephants will work together to help even another species. Wolves do more of that first-rate teamwork we see, for example, in our military. We work very well together to conquer and kill other members of the human race. Elephants have ways to settle grievances and bring about reconciliation. Wolves attack each other and kill the pups of another pack. Herds of elephants, different herds, can gather peacefully, a few hundred of them. Wolves mostly can keep the peace just in their closely related packs. Lately, we human beings are having an awful lot of trouble accepting and living in peace with unrelated herds or packs of other people. Whether it's those who are scared of Muslims and immigrants, or whether it's an organization like ISIS that can't accept or live in peace with really any other community. What about policemen with young black Americans? What about a young black American who, in Dallas, killed 5 policemen and wounded others? The British just voted to leave the European Union, the basis of possibly world peace. They voted out of fear of uncontrolled mingling immigration with other human beings. We are the most powerful species on Earth, yet we can't stop killing each other. I can pray for us to be more like the elephants, but that prayer seems in vain. Are we most like wolves? I think so. But it's that story of the wolf named 21 that gives me hope. Here was a wolf who surpassed all the others in strength and power. He killed prey so he and his pack and pups could survive. And yet, there was a quality in him that transcended what you might call wolf culture. He would defeat, he would vanquish, but he would not kill another wolf. He'd let him go away, kind of crawling on his stomach and with his tail between his legs, but let that wolf go away alive. If 21 were a human warrior, we'd speak of mercy, of kindness, of a magnanimous spirit. When 21 went alone to the very top of the mountain, in the grass and wildflowers, to his final sleep. I have to believe that something of him was drawn forever into the spirit of this universe. So, this is my prayer. Though we cannot escape our own dangerous natures, yet we may strive to learn from this wolf. We can transcend our culture of violence and vengeance and use our enormous power to keep our own species safe. We can learn from Androcles and the lion, from dolphins and parrots and elephants, how we may cross the barriers of species and save each other. We shall never have the temperament of elephants, but we can learn skills of reconciliation. We can be better animals. May it be so.